Peace be with you, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to our program, Jesus, Via Mary, brought to you by Mary's littlest children. Remember that the quickest, surest, best way to the Sacred Heart of Jesus is through Mary, his mother. She is our mother also, the Blessed Virgin, the Immaculate Conception. Now let's begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to your protection, implored your help, or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired with this confidence, we fly unto you, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To you do we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer them. Amen. We have a really good program for you today, brothers and sisters. We're going to talk about the presence of God. The presence of God in us, and us being in the presence of God. Recently, at the Vatican on March 2nd of 2014, on a rainy day, Pope Francis, in his Angelus message, focused on the importance of seeking God above all else, especially earthly goods. He said, "A heart occupied by the desire to possess is full of this desire to possess things, but empty of God. In a heart possessed by riches, there is not much space for faith. Everything is occupied by riches. There is no place for faith. Instead, one should allow God his rightful place, and that is first place." How do we put God first? We may try living in the presence of God. I'm going to share with you now from the writings of Father John Hardon, a Jesuit priest whose cause is being considered. And this was obtained from the Real Presence organization, foundation, that promotes all of Father Hardon's writings. And we have done this with their permission. I'll be quoting excerpts from Father Hardon, and I'll be inserting my little comments here and there, but most of it is from Father John Hardon. Living in the presence of God, Father says, "There is no single subject in spiritual literature that is more highly recommended or insisted upon as more indispensable than the spirit of recollection, or, we might say, living in God's presence. There's no question about its fundamental role. The important thing is, how do we grow or develop in this living in God's presence? Whatever the spiritual life is, it is practice, practice, and more practice. Presence in and of itself describes a relationship between people. Now, is God with us? Well, yes. God must sustain us, so surely we must be present to him. He's always present to us by his infinity also, or, as I prefer to say, and this is Father John Hardon's words, physically, because the reality of God is always affecting or influencing us. Admitting that God is always present to us physically, is he always present to us spiritually? It is the spiritual presence of God that is the subject of this meditation. What does it mean to live in God's presence in this spiritual sense, unless we first make up our minds to take time out to think about God? And nobody, not even God, will make up our minds for us. We have to do that ourselves. If then we wish to cultivate living in the presence of God, we must set our minds to think about God. We must place Him before the eyes of our mind. And this God will not force upon us because of our free will. We must look at Him with the power of our mental reflection, enlightened by faith. There's all the difference in the world between a person being here and our seeing that person. And more still is there even a difference between seeing and looking at the person. We must first look at God with that faculty whose principal purpose is to see God. We must then see Him with that strange power we have of recalling people we want to think about. One of the privileges we have is that if we want to, we will. If we don't want to, we won't. It's the power we have over these minds of ours to direct them to attend to whom we wish to think about, and if we want to whom we wish to forget. Some people have the ability to turn their thoughts easily and almost instinctively towards God, and others find it not so easy. The essence of the contemplative life is not great facility in turning towards God. That's not what makes a contemplative. What does make a contemplative is turning one's mind towards God, whether it's easy or not. And this is the basis of everything else. Of course, it demands some effort, especially effort to stop thinking about other things, such as wealth, power, prestige. But we must take every occasion to use, or if need be, create situations which then become occasions for being thought full of God, where our thoughts are full of God. What we have to convince ourselves of is that we have the power of turning our minds to what we want. The creating of occasions to become full of thoughts of God is the fundamental principle operative in spiritual reading. What's the difference between spiritual reading and that which is not spiritual? The nature of spiritual reading ought to be such that it reminds us of God. This is also the purpose of sacred images, pictures, statues, and crucifixes. This is the purpose of liturgical ritual and of religious symbolism. Moreover, it's the fundamental reason in God's providence for external gestures, such as words, posture, position, in times of prayer, and is the whole purpose for creating such occasions, that we should be surrounded, literally immersed, in religious symbols which will remind us of God. This is so basic that if we wish to foster living in God's presence, we must make sure that He first comes to our attention outside of the mind in order that He will enter inside the mind. While it's possible to think of God without external reminders, it becomes increasingly difficult. Clearly, just thinking about God is not yet living in God's presence in the way in which we know we should as Christians. God must also, and especially, be in our wills. Here we have Christ's own formula for cultivating this presence of God. At the Last Supper, among other things, He said, "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word," meaning he will do my will. "And my Father will love him, and we shall come to him and make our home with him." The "if" is up to us, always, of course, with God's grace. The "and," in this case, is up to God. We take care of the "if," and He will take care of the "and." "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we shall come to him and make our home with him." In this passage from Christ's homily at the Last Supper is the perfect method for living in God's presence with our wills, with the assured guarantee of His then responsive dwelling in our hearts. It means simply and unequivocally that we try as far as possible always to say yes to God's will in our lives. how hard this is to put into practice. When we are tired and there is work to be done, what do? We must do it. When we are worried and uncertain about the outcome, we may have tried it before and failed, but we are sure it is God's will, so we do it. At times we cannot understand why something happened to us or those we love, but we must say, "Thy will be done." Every time we unite ourselves in will to resign ourselves to the will of God, where the yes may be very reluctant, or every time we carry into effect God's will by doing it, we are living in His presence by that strongest of all presences, the union of love, where both lover and beloved have the same will. In this case, He becomes ours. No wonder Christ promises those who keep His word that the Father would love Him, and we, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, shall come to Him and make our home with Him. When are you at home? When you belong, when you feel you belong. So too with God. If we can use human language, He is made to feel He belongs. When you are taken for granted, you can relax. You're home. We touch then on the heart of our subject when we say this: God will do His part. He will make His home with us. Now the trouble is, we expect something for nothing. So we read books of St. John of the Cross, of St. Paul of the Cross, of St. Teresa of Avila, of Ignatius, of Margaret Mary, and we almost envy the consolations they experienced, the intimacy with God, which they evidently possessed. St. Margaret Mary spent 7 or more hours in chapel, lost in ecstasy before the Eucharist. Well, God is a hard bargainer. Of course He will give us His intimacy. We know enough about the spiritual life to know that the subjective or psychological awareness of God's presence is not necessarily a sign of high sanctity. Nevertheless, the deep sense of intimacy of God's indwelling is not something we can acquire cheaply. These are costly graces. If we wish to experience them, we have to carry the cross. If we do this, He will do His part. We give Him our wills, and He gives us the intimacy of His presence, as only God, making His home in our souls, can bring about. Living in God's presence practically. Is there some practical rule for growing in the presence of God? How do we do it? We make progress living in the presence of God, the better we learn to live less and less in the presence of self. There are all kinds of ways you can divide the human race: the men and the women, the rich and the poor, the literate and the illiterate, the Christian and the non-Christian. We can also divide the world into 2 parts: those who spend most of their time living in the presence of self, and those who try, as far as possible, to live in the presence of God. We hear much about the function of grace as given to us by God in order to carry out His will. That is undoubtedly one of the purposes of grace. But the role of grace is not only that we might do God's will, but that we might enjoy doing it by sensing down deep into the recesses of our souls that He is with us. This sense of God being with us is His gift, on one condition: that we try to be with Him. Living then in God's presence is the joy. He gives us in this life as a foretaste of the joys in store for us, when all effort and struggle will cease, and only peace and beatitude will be had. You see, heaven is living in God's presence, where we don't have to work at it anymore. We're going to switch now a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, from the spiritual presence of Christ to the real presence of Christ. And again, we'll be quoting from Father John Hardon. And all of the information that we're using tonight can be found